Lucas arrived at his post in the parking lot of the luxury shopping mall. Wearing his impeccable uniform, he watched the constant flow of luxury cars and people in a hurry as they began another day of shopping and business. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The air was filled with the aroma of fresh coffee from nearby coffee shops, mixed with the smell of asphalt and rubber from tires that were constantly spinning. Lucas greeted his regular customers with a friendly smile, always alert for any suspicious movement or situation that required his intervention. His experienced eyes scanned every corner of the parking lot, ensuring the safety of everyone who passed by. As he adjusted the radio on his belt, Lucas reflected on the responsibility of his job, aware that his presence was essential to maintain order and tranquility in that hectic environment. Amidst the hustle and bustle of the parking lot, Lucas's attentive gaze was drawn to a scene that stood out from the frenetic routine. An elderly woman with grey hair and shoulders hunched over by the weight of years was standing in front of the payment machine. Her trembling hands rummaged through a worn leather bag, while her eyes, framed by deep wrinkles, alternated anxiously between the contents of the bag and the luminous screen of the machine. The confusion etched on her face was evident, mixed with a growing distress that seemed to increase with each passing second. Lucas noticed how she bit her lower lip, a gesture that betrayed her frustration and helplessness. The contrast between the woman's fragility and the modern, impersonal environment of the parking lot was stark, awakening in the security guard a feeling of compassion and an irresistible urge to offer help. With careful steps, Lucas approached the elderly woman, modulating his voice to a gentle and comforting tone. "Can I help you with something?" he asked, noticing the immediate relief in the tired eyes that looked at him. The woman, with a trembling voice, explained her situation. She had lost her wallet and could not find enough money to pay the parking ticket. Her words were interrupted by sighs of despair, revealing how much the situation distressed her. Lucas listened attentively, nodding in understanding, as the elderly woman vented about how this setback was ruining her day. The vulnerability in her voice and the way her hands tightened on the strap of her bag told a story of anxiety and fear in the face of a seemingly simple obstacle, but which for her represented an insurmountable mountain. In a gesture of pure kindness, Lucas didn't hesitate. In one fluid movement, he reached into his back pocket for his wallet and withdrew the amount needed for the ticket. "Don't worry, ma'am, I'll make sure to pay for it for you," he said with a warm smile. The decision was instinctive, born of deep compassion and a genuine desire to alleviate the suffering of others. Lucas didn't think about the consequences to himself or the money he was spending. His only concern was to bring comfort and resolution to this distressing situation. As he inserted the bills into the machine, he felt a wave of satisfaction run through his body, reaffirming his belief in the importance of small acts of kindness. For Lucas, this wasn't just paying for a ticket, but an investment in humanity and empathy. Upon receiving the paid ticket, the elderly woman was momentarily speechless, her expression a mixture of surprise and profound gratitude. Tears began to well up in her eyes, reflecting the morning sunlight like tiny diamonds. With a voice choked with emotion, she held Lucas's hands between hers, trembling and wrinkled, and began to tell him about her day. She had left early for a doctor's appointment that brought worrying news, lost her wallet on the bus, and felt completely helpless up until that moment. Lucas's gesture was not only a solution to a practical problem, but a ray of light in a dark day, a reminder that there was still goodness in the world. Each word of thanks from the elderly woman was filled with sincerity, making that moment a deep and unforgettable human connection for both of them. As the scene unfolded, other mall employees watched from a distance, their reactions ranging from curiosity to disdain. Some exchanged knowing glances, smirks that denoted a mixture of disbelief and mockery. "There goes Lucas again, playing the hero," one of them muttered, rolling his eyes. Another employee shook his head, commenting quietly about how idiotic Lucas was for spending his own money. These observers, immersed in their own routine and concerns, were unable to understand the depth of Lucas's gesture. To them, accustomed to the indifference of everyday life, the empathy he demonstrated seemed out of place, almost naive. Their mocking smiles perhaps masked an uncomfortable reflection on their own attitudes and values in an increasingly individualistic world. With a firmer step and a smile lighting up her wrinkled face, the elderly woman left the mall, carrying with her not only her purchases, but also a renewed faith in humanity. Her heart, once heavy with the worries of the day, now beat lightly, warmed by the act of kindness she had experienced. Lucas, for his part, returned to his post with a sense of fulfillment that no amount of money could buy. As he watched the elderly woman walk away, he reaffirmed to himself the conviction that he had done the right thing. The comments and looks from his colleagues did not diminish the importance of his gesture. On the contrary, they strengthened his determination to be a beacon of compassion in an often indifferent world. For Lucas, this small act of generosity was a reminder of the transformative power of empathy and the importance of following one's values, regardless of the opinions of others. The sun was already setting on the horizon, dyeing the sky orange, when Lucas received the call that would change the course of his day. The radio on his belt crackled with Mr. Silver's firm voice, summoning him to an immediate meeting. A chill ran down his spine, as end-of-shift calls rarely brought good news. As he walked through the mall's now nearly empty corridors, Lucas mentally reviewed the day's events, searching for some clue as to the reason for the summons. As he approached the door to the supervisor's office, he noticed the serious expression of the secretary, who avoided his gaze. The air seemed heavier, charged with palpable tension. With a deep sigh to calm his nerves, Lucas knocked on the door, his mind a whirlwind of possibilities. Mr. Silver's deep voice answered, inviting him in, and Lucas felt like he was about to face an unexpected storm. Upon entering the office, Lucas was immediately struck by Mr. Silver's stern gaze, which peered at him over the top of his heavy-framed glasses. The supervisor, a middle-aged man with graying hair and a perpetually scowl, wasted no time with pleasantries. "Lucas," he began, his voice sharp as a blade, "it has come to my attention that you paid a customer's parking ticket today, without authorization." The words hung in the air like a heavy accusation. Lucas felt his stomach sink, realizing that his act of kindness had been interpreted as a serious transgression. The supervisor continued, detailing the company's strict policies and how Lucas's action represented an unacceptable breach of protocol. Each word was like a brick being added to a wall between human compassion and the inflexible rules of the corporate system. With his heart racing, Lucas tried to explain his actions, his words coming out hurriedly and thick with emotion. "Mr. Silver, please understand. This was an elderly woman. She was desperate. I only wanted to help. I used my own money. I didn't cause any harm to the company." His voice shook slightly, reflecting the mix of nervousness and conviction he felt. Lucas described the scene in the parking lot, the anguish in the old woman's eyes, the irresistible urge to do something good. He emphasized that his intention was purely altruistic, a reflection of the values he believed the company represented. Yet as he spoke, Lucas realized that his words were falling on deaf ears. Mr. Silver's face remained impassive, his eyes cold as ice. To each argument Lucas made, the supervisor responded with quotes from the Code of Conduct, inflexible rules that left no room for interpretation or exceptions. The silence that followed Lucas's explanation was broken by Mr. Silver's unforgiving voice. "Lucas, I understand your intent, but the rules are in place for a reason. Your action, while well-intentioned, represents a serious violation of our policies." He paused, his eyes fixed on Lucas, with a coldness that was paralyzing. "Unfortunately, I have no choice but to inform you that you are terminated, effective immediately." The words fell like a hammer, crushing Lucas's hopes. The supervisor continued, his monotone voice detailing the termination procedures as if he were reading a grocery list. To Lucas, the world seemed to spin in slow motion. He could barely process what he was hearing, the injustice of the situation stifling any attempt to respond. The contrast between his act of kindness and the cold, bureaucratic response of the system was stark, a painful demonstration of how human compassion can be crushed by the impersonal gears of corporate rules. Lucas's world seemed to crumble around him, He remained motionless in his chair, his wide eyes fixed on an invisible point beyond Mr. Silver's shoulder. His hands, once steady and sure in their work, now trembled slightly on his knees. Lucas's mind was spinning in a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts and emotions. How could a simple act of kindness result in something so drastic? The injustice of the situation suffocated him, leaving him momentarily speechless. He tried to speak, but his voice failed, caught in his throat by the knot of emotions that was forming. Flashbacks of the moment with the old woman flooded his mind, her grateful smile contrasting cruelly with the coldness of the office. Lucas felt as if he were trapped in a surreal nightmare, unable to comprehend how the world could punish so severely a gesture of human compassion. Still dazed, Lucas was led out of the office by Mr. Silver, who kept a firm hand on his shoulder, as if he feared an impulsive reaction. In the hallway, co-workers watched the scene with a mixture of curiosity and discomfort. Some looked away, unable to face the reality of what was happening. Others whispered among themselves, their expressions varying between surprise and barely concealed relief that it was not them in Lucas's place. Upon reaching the security office, Lucas was instructed to empty his locker and hand over his badge. Each personal item he collected seemed to weigh tons, loaded with memories and a sense of belonging that was now fading. The metallic sound of the badge being placed on the table echoed in the silent room, symbolizing the abrupt end of his career at the mall. As he walked towards the exit, Lucas felt the eyes of his former colleagues burning into his back, a mixture of pity, confusion, and the silent fear that the same thing could happen to any of them. Lucas walked through the mall's automatic doors for the last time as an employee, the cool night air contrasting with the weight on his chest. His uniform, once a source of pride, now felt like a bitter reminder of everything he had lost. As he walked through the parking lot, the same place where he had performed his act of kindness hours earlier, Lucas felt a wave of conflicting emotions. The injustice of the situation consumed him, fueling a silent rage against a system that seemed to value rules more than human compassion. Yet amid the desolation, a small flame of conviction remained lit in his heart. Mentally replaying the elderly woman's grateful face, Lucas knew that, even in the face of the consequences, he did not regret his action. This certainty, while it did not ease the pain of being fired, offered silent comfort. As he walked away from the mall, Lucas carried with him not only the sadness of losing his job, but also the renewed determination not to allow the coldness of the world to erase his humanity. Lucas finally arrived home, his heavy footsteps dragging along the familiar sidewalk. The scent of roses from the garden, which normally cheered him up, now seemed a cruel irony in the face of his despair. Opening the door, he was greeted by the comforting aroma of dinner being prepared and the cheerful sound of laughter coming from the kitchen. For a brief moment, Lucas hesitated, his hand frozen on the doorknob, reluctant to bring the shadow of his dismissal into the warm atmosphere of his home. Taking a deep breath, he entered, forcing a smile when he saw his mother, Elisa, stirring a pot on the stove, and his 5-year-old daughter, Sophia, drawing at the kitchen table. Elisa's experienced eyes immediately noticed something amiss in her son's tense posture, while Sophia, in her childlike innocence, ran to hug her father's legs, unaware of the storm he brought with him. The sun had already set when Lucas finally arrived home, his heavy footsteps dragging along the familiar sidewalk. The scent of roses from the garden, which normally cheered him up, now seemed a cruel irony in the face of his despair. Opening the door, he was greeted by the comforting aroma of dinner being prepared and the cheerful sound of laughter coming from the kitchen. For a brief moment, Lucas hesitated, his hand frozen on the doorknob, reluctant to bring the shadow of his dismissal into the warm atmosphere of his home. Taking a deep breath, he walked inside, forcing a smile when he saw his mother, Elisa, stirring a pot on the stove, and his 5-year-old daughter, Sophia, drawing at the kitchen table. Elisa's experienced eyes immediately noticed something amiss in her son's tense posture, while Sophia, in her childlike innocence, ran to hug her father's legs, unaware of the storm he brought with him. Lucas hugged Sophia tightly, feeling the lump in his throat grow. His eyes met Elisa's, who was watching him with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Is everything okay, son?" she asked softly, placing the wooden spoon on the counter. Lucas opened his mouth to respond, but the words stuck. How could he possibly bring this devastating news to his family? Images of unpaid bills, an empty refrigerator, and his mother's worried face flooded his mind. He thought about Sophia's school, Elisa's medical bills, the rent that was due soon. Every second of silence weighed like lead on his shoulders. Lucas struggled internally, torn between the desire to protect his family from the painful truth and the need to share the burden he was carrying. His fingers absently stroked Sophia's hair, his mind desperately searching for a way to soften the blow he was about to deliver. "Mom, I lost my job today," Lucas finally managed, the words coming out in a painful whisper. The silence that followed was deafening. Elisa stood still for a moment, the color draining from her face. She slowly approached, her eyes searching her son's, trying to understand, to comfort. "Oh, Lucas," she whispered, her voice shaking slightly. Elisa hugged him, tight and protective, the way she had when he was a child. But Lucas could feel the tension in her shoulders, the slight tremor in her hands. When she pulled away, her eyes were already calculating, worried. "The bills," she began, but stopped, biting her lip. Lucas saw the fear dancing in his mother's eyes, fear of the late rent, the medical bills, the uncertain future. Elisa tried to smile, to be strong for him, but the worry was palpable in every line of her face. "We'll figure it out," she said, more to herself than to Lucas, her voice holding a fragile determination. While the adults talked in low, worried tones, Sophia, with her large, curious eyes, watched the scene without fully understanding what was happening. Sensing the sadness in the air, she approached Lucas, gently tugging on the hem of his shirt. "Daddy," she said in her childish voice, "why are you sad?" Lucas knelt down to his daughter's level, struggling to find simple words to explain such a complex situation. "Daddy had a little problem at work, honey," he began, his voice breaking. Sophia tilted her head thoughtfully for a moment before breaking into a radiant smile. "But you always do what's right, Daddy," she exclaimed with innocent conviction, throwing her little arms around Lucas's neck. "The teacher says that doing the right thing is the most important thing." Sophia's words, in their pure simplicity, reached Lucas like a ray of light in the darkness. Silent tears streamed down his face as he hugged his daughter, feeling a mixture of gratitude for her innocence and pain for the reality she still didn't understand. The weight of guilt crushed Lucas's chest as he watched his mother and daughter. "I'm so sorry," he murmured, his voice cracking. "I shouldn't have. I put you through this." Elisa, sensing her son's torment, stepped closer, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Lucas, my son," she began, her voice soft but firm, "you have nothing to be ashamed of." Her eyes, full of love and understanding, met Lucas's. "You acted from the heart. You helped someone in need. That's what we've always taught you." Elisa's words were like a balm to Lucas's wounded soul. She continued, her voice gaining strength. "In this world, sometimes we are punished for doing good, but that doesn't mean we should stop doing it." Lucas felt a wave of emotion wash over him, gratitude mixed with a renewed sense of purpose. His mother's words echoed Sophia's innocent wisdom, reminding him that despite the consequences, he had been true to his values. In the days that followed, the reality of the situation began to weigh more and more heavily on Lucas's shoulders. Sitting at the kitchen table, piles of bills spread out in front of him, he felt as if he was sinking in quicksand. Each number seemed to scream at him, reminding him of his responsibilities and the precariousness of his situation. The rent, the utility bills, Elisa's health insurance, Sophia's school fees, it all seemed to pile up into an insurmountable mountain. Lucas spent sleepless nights browsing job sites, submitting resumes for any job opening that came up. But the silence of the responses was deafening. The refrigerator began to feel emptier, and he noticed the worried looks Elisa gave him when she opened it. The sound of Sophia's laughter playing in the backyard was now accompanied by a pang of anxiety in his heart. How could he provide for his daughter's future? How would he provide for his family? The feeling of being lost, adrift in a sea of uncertainty, consumed him, leaving him exhausted and desperate for a light at the end of the tunnel. It was a Wednesday afternoon, the grey sky reflecting Lucas's state of mind, when his cell phone vibrated with a notification. Distracted and without great expectations, he unlocked the screen, prepared for yet another disappointment. However, what he saw made his heart skip a beat. It was a message from an unknown number. "Hello, Mr. Lucas. My name is Maria. I am the granddaughter of the lady you helped in the mall parking lot. I have something important to talk to you about. Can we meet?" Lucas reread the message several times in disbelief. A mix of emotions invaded him: curiosity, hope, a touch of apprehension. His hands trembled slightly as he typed an affirmative response. While waiting for confirmation of the meeting, Lucas felt something he hadn't experienced in days: a spark of hope. It was as if a ray of sunshine had finally penetrated the dark clouds that hung over his life. He didn't know what to expect from this meeting, but something in his heart told him that this could be the turning point he had been waiting for. Lucas's phone vibrated in his hand, displaying an unknown number on the screen. His heart beat faster instantly, a mixture of hope and apprehension taking over his being. In the last few days, every unknown call brought with it the possibility of a job opportunity, but also the fear of yet another charge. With trembling fingers, he slid the button to answer, his voice coming out a little louder than usual. "Hello?" The brief silence that followed seemed to last an eternity. Lucas could hear his own breathing, the ticking of the clock on the kitchen wall, the distant barking of a dog on the street. His mind raced, imagining 1,000 different scenarios. Was it a recruiter responding to one of the countless resumes he had sent? Or perhaps the bank manager, calling to discuss overdue bills? Uncertainty consumed him as he waited, heart in his throat for the voice on the other end of the line. "Hello, is this Mr. Lucas?" A young, polite male voice broke the silence. Lucas nodded, his curiosity growing. "This is Marcos, Donna Emilia's grandson. You helped her at the mall a few weeks ago." The words struck Lucas like a bolt of lightning, vividly bringing back the memory of that fateful day. He saw the elderly woman's grateful face again, felt the weight of the ticket in her hand, relived the moment that changed the course of his life. Yes, I remember," Lucas replied, his voice trembling slightly with the emotion of the memory. 1,000 questions flooded his mind. How had Marcos found him? Why was he calling after so long? What could he possibly want? Marcos's voice continued, filled with a gratitude that Lucas could feel through the phone. "Mr. Lucas, you don't know how much it means to our family to finally be able to speak to you." Lucas swallowed hard, trying to process the surreal situation he found himself in, while preparing himself to hear what Marcos had to say. Marcos's voice shook slightly as he continued, "Mr. Lucas, I have no words to express how much your kindness meant to my grandmother, to all of us." Lucas felt a lump form in his throat, moved by the palpable sincerity in the young man's words. Ever since that day at the mall, Grandma hasn't stopped talking about the angel in uniform who helped her. She tells the story to anyone who will listen, and even those who won't. Marcos laughed softly, and Lucas couldn't help but smile, imagining the scene. "You have no idea the impact you had. Grandma was going through a difficult time, feeling alone and forgotten. Your gesture, well, it was like you turned on a light in her life." Marcos's words painted a vivid picture of the lasting effect of a simple act of kindness. Lucas felt tears fill his eyes, a mixture of emotion and relief at the realization that, despite the personal consequences, his act had truly made a difference in someone's life. Marcos paused, his voice taking on a more serious tone. "Mr. Lucas, we heard about your dismissal." Lucas felt his stomach sink, the bitter memory of the day he lost his job resurfacing. "How?" he started to ask, but Marcos interrupted him gently. "Grandma came back to the mall to thank you in person, and she was informed of what happened. Mr. Lucas, we are outraged." The vehemence in Marcos's voice was palpable. "It is unbelievable that someone could be punished for an act of kindness. What kind of world do we live in?" Lucas listened, stunned as Marcos expressed his outrage. It was surreal to hear a stranger defend him with such fervor. You didn't deserve this. No one deserves to be treated like this for doing good. Marcos' words were a balm to Lucas's wounded heart, validating his feelings of injustice and rekindling in him a flame of indignation that had been suffocated by the weight of guilt and despair. "Mr. Lucas," Marcos continued, his voice now thick with determination, "our family can't stop thinking about what happened to you. We were deeply touched by your kindness and, frankly, distraught by the consequences you suffered." Lucas listened in silence, a mix of emotions bubbling in his chest. "We've talked about this a lot, and we've come to the conclusion that we can't just sit back and do nothing. We want to help you in some way." Marcos's words fell like a ray of hope in Lucas's heart. "Help?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, Mr. Lucas. You did something extraordinary for our grandmother, for our family. Now we want to pay you back, not out of obligation, but because your act of kindness inspired us to be better, to do more for others." Lucas felt silent tears streaming down his face, touched by the unexpected generosity of strangers. It was as if the universe was conspiring to show him that, in the end, kindness really does pay off. Marcos took a deep breath before continuing. "Mr. Lucas, we actually have something more concrete in mind. We'd like to make you a job offer." Lucas felt as if the air had been sucked from his lungs. A job offer? His mind was spinning, trying to process the information. "Job?" he managed to stammer. "Yes," Marcos replied, his voice now animated. "Our family owns a business, and we believe that your qualities, your integrity, your compassion, are exactly what we're looking for. Would you like to meet to discuss the details?" Lucas could hardly believe what he was hearing. It was as if a door had opened in what had seemed like a dead end. Yes, of course," he replied, his voice shaking with emotion. Marcos suggested a coffee date downtown for the next day, and Lucas readily agreed. As they said their goodbyes, Lucas felt a wave of gratitude and hope wash over him. It was as if the universe was offering him a second chance, an opportunity born from the very act of kindness that had cost him so much. After hanging up the phone, Lucas remained motionless for several minutes, trying to process everything that had happened. The conversation had felt surreal, like a dream he was afraid to wake up from. His thoughts were a whirlwind of emotions: disbelief, hope, anxiety, gratitude. He couldn't fully understand what was coming, what kind of job it might be, whether it was really right for him. 1,000 questions danced through his mind, but above all, there was a growing sense that something important was about to happen. Lucas looked out the window, watching the sun begin to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. It was as if nature was reflecting the change in his fortunes, a new dawn after days of darkness. With his heart pounding in his chest, he stood up to share the news with Elisa and Sophia. For the first time in weeks, a genuine smile lit up his face. No matter what awaited him at the meeting the next day, Lucas knew he would face it with courage and optimism. After all, his act of kindness, which seemed to have cost so much, now revealed itself as the catalyst for a new and hopeful journey. Lucas arrived at the cafe with his heart racing, his hands shaking slightly as he pushed open the glass door. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee enveloped him, mixing with his palpable anxiety. His eyes scanned the room, searching for anyone who might be Marcos. That was when he noticed a well-dressed young man, probably in his 30s, waving discreetly from a table in the corner. With hesitant steps, Lucas approached, each step echoing in his ears like a drum. "Mr. Lucas?" The man stood up, extending his hand with a warm smile. "I'm Marcos. It's a pleasure to finally meet you in person." Lucas returned the handshake, noting the firmness and sincerity in the gesture. As they sat down, Lucas couldn't help but notice the contrast between his own nervousness and Marcos's confident calm. The waiter approached, and Marcos ordered 2 coffees. Lucas watched every movement, every expression, searching for clues as to what was to come, his stomach a knot of anticipation and uncertainty. After a few minutes of pleasant conversation, Marcos leaned forward slightly, his expression becoming more serious. "Mr. Lucas." "There is something I need to tell you," he began, his voice filled with a mixture of respect and admiration. "I am the owner of a parking garage chain here in the city." Lucas felt his eyes widen at the unexpected revelation. Marcos continued, "When I learned about what happened to my grandmother and subsequently your dismissal, I was deeply impressed by your character." He paused, his eyes fixed on Lucas. "In all my years in the business, I have rarely seen anyone demonstrate such integrity and compassion as you do." Lucas felt a blush creep up his neck, a mixture of pride and embarrassment at the compliment. Marcos continued, detailing how he had researched Lucas further, speaking with former colleagues and clients. "Every person I spoke to confirmed what I already suspected. You are an extraordinary person, Mr. Lucas, someone who puts human values above all else, even when it means personal sacrifice." Marcos paused, taking a sip of his coffee as Lucas absorbed his words, still dazed from the compliments. "Mr. Lucas," Marcos continued, his voice now thick with purpose, "I would like to offer you a position with my company." Lucas felt his heart leap. A job offer was more than he had dared hope for, but Marcos wasn't done. "This isn't just any job. I want to offer you a position of trust as operations manager for our main branch." Lucas's mouth fell open, unable to believe what he was hearing. Marcos detailed the responsibilities, overseeing daily operations, training staff, implementing customer service policies. "I believe your experience in security, combined with your exceptional people skills, makes you the ideal candidate." Lucas's head spun. This was so much more than just a job. It was a career opportunity, a chance to use his skills in ways he had never imagined. He looked at Marcos, searching for signs that this might be an elaborate prank, but found only sincerity and expectation on the businessman's face. Still stunned by the magnitude of the offer, Lucas felt a wave of insecurity wash over him. "Mr. Marcos," he began, his voice shaking slightly, I don't know what to say. This is an incredible opportunity, but..." He paused, struggling to find the right words. "Are you sure I'm the right person? I mean, I have no management experience and..." Marcos held up a hand gently, cutting him off. "Mr. Lucas, I understand your hesitation, but let me explain why I'm certain you're exactly who we're looking for." He leaned forward, his eyes fixed on Lucas with an intensity that made him feel both exposed and valued at the same time. "Your gesture toward my grandmother wasn't just an act of kindness. It was a demonstration of integrity, empathy, and the ability to make quick decisions in difficult situations. These are qualities that cannot be taught, Mr. Lucas. They are the foundation of an exceptional leader." Marcos continued, explaining how technical skills could be learned, but character and values were innate. "You have proven yourself not only that day, but throughout your career. I believe this position is not only something you deserve, but something you were born to do." As the conversation deepened, Marcos let out a heavy sigh, his expression softening, with a mixture of sadness and gratitude. "Mr. Lucas, there is something else I need to tell you," he began, his voice now lower and thick with emotion. "My grandmother, she suffers from a degenerative disease, Alzheimer's." Lucas felt a tightness in his chest at hearing these words. Marcos continued, "The last few years have been difficult. She has good days and bad days, but lately, the bad ones have been more frequent." He paused, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "But that day at the mall, the day you helped her, was one of the few moments of true happiness she has had in a long time." Lucas listened, stunned, as Marcos described how his grandmother came home radiant, telling and retelling the story of the parking lot angel to anyone who would listen. "You didn't just help her with the ticket, Mr. Lucas, you gave her back, even if just for a brief moment, her faith in human kindness. And that is something that is priceless." Marcos's words weighed heavily on Lucas, making him realize the true impact of his simple act of kindness. An emotion-laden silence hung between them for a few moments. Lucas felt a lump in his throat, overwhelmed by the magnitude of everything he had heard. Finally, with a choked voice, he managed to speak. "Mr. Marcos, I accept your offer." The words came out almost as a whisper, filled with gratitude and determination. "I don't know if I will be able to meet all your expectations, but I promise to do my best." Marcos smiled, a genuine smile that lit up his face. "That's all I ask, Mr. Lucas." As they exchanged a firm handshake to seal the deal, Lucas felt a wave of emotions wash over him. This wasn't just a job opportunity. It was a validation of everything he believed in. It was a recognition that kindness, compassion, and integrity had value in the business world. More than that, it was a chance to continue making a difference in people's lives, now on a larger scale. Lucas saw this offer not only as a solution to his financial problems, but as a platform to spread the same kindness that had brought him here. With his heart full of gratitude and his eyes filled with tears, Lucas realized that his life was about to take a completely new and unexpected turn. As Lucas left the cafe, he felt as if he were floating, his footsteps light against the mall floor. The buzz of people around him seemed distant, drowned out by the whirlwind of thoughts and emotions in his mind. He paused for a moment, looking around at the same mall where, weeks ago, a simple act of kindness had changed the course of his life. An involuntary smile formed on his lips as the realization hit him. His actions, which had once cost him so much, were now being recognized in a way he could never have imagined. The sense of injustice that had haunted him since his dismissal began to dissipate, replaced by a growing sense of purpose and hope. Lucas knew that the challenges that awaited him in his new position would be significant, but he felt prepared to face them. As he walked toward the exit, each step seemed to bring him closer to a bright and uncertain future. His life was about to change drastically, and for the first time in weeks, Lucas felt genuinely excited about what lay ahead. He left the mall not only with a new job opportunity, but with the reaffirmation that, in the end, kindness and integrity really do pay off. Lucas arrived at his first day of work with a mixture of nervousness and excitement. The parking lot, previously familiar only to customers, now revealed itself to be a complex system of operations. He was greeted by a curious team, some friendly, others wary. Marcos introduced him as the new manager, emphasizing his experience and integrity. Lucas took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility, but also a surge of determination. He knew he had a lot to learn, but he was ready for the challenge. With a confident smile, he greeted each member of the team, promising himself to do his best on this new journey. The first few weeks were a roller coaster of learning and challenges for Lucas. He found himself immersed in financial spreadsheets, employee schedules, and maintenance reports, tasks that were very different from his previous job as a security guard. There were moments of self-doubt, sleepless nights studying management manuals, but Lucas didn't give up. He approached each new challenge with the same determination that drove him to help that lady in the parking lot. His work ethic and eagerness to learn didn't go unnoticed. Little by little, he began to master his new responsibilities, gaining confidence with each passing day. Over time, Lucas found his groove. His experience working with people as a security guard proved valuable in his new role. He began implementing small changes, such as holding regular meetings to listen to employee concerns. His empathetic approach and willingness to work side by side with his team on the most difficult tasks earned him the respect of many. Lucas not only delegated, but also taught, sharing knowledge and encouraging his team's professional growth. His leadership was based on understanding and mutual respect, creating a more collaborative and positive work environment. Initially, some of the older employees were skeptical of Lucas. Rumors about how he got the job had been circulating, fueling suspicions. However, Lucas's consistent and fair approach began to change those perceptions. He treated everyone equally, regardless of their position, and was always willing to listen to suggestions. His competence was evident in the way he handled difficult situations, from unhappy customers to complex technical problems. Gradually, even the most skeptical began to recognize his abilities. Initial distrust gave way to respect, as Lucas proved day after day that he was not only fair but also a capable and dedicated leader. Under Lucas's leadership, the work environment underwent a remarkable transformation. Employees, now more motivated, approached their tasks with renewed enthusiasm. Communication improved, resulting in more efficient operations. Lucas implemented a recognition program celebrating exceptional team efforts. This was reflected directly in customer service. Parking lot users noticed the difference. More smiling employees, faster service, and a more welcoming environment. Complaints decreased, while compliments increased. The parking lot, once seen as a place to pass through, became a beacon of service excellence, with satisfied customers returning regularly. The story of Lucas's arrival at the company, his act of kindness and its unexpected consequences, began to circulate among employees. At first a whisper, it quickly became an inspiring tale. Colleagues from other parking garages in the chain would come to meet him, curious to see the kindness manager in action. Lucas, a humble man, used these opportunities to emphasize the importance of empathy in the workplace. His story inspired a wave of small acts of kindness among employees. People began to help each other more, to be more understanding of customers. The company culture began to subtly change, with Lucas's kindness as the catalyst. As Lucas reflected on the events of the past few months, he felt a profound sense of accomplishment. What had started as a simple act of kindness had turned into a journey of personal and professional growth that he could never have anticipated. He could now see how his life had changed for the better, not just financially, but in terms of purpose and fulfillment. Lucas realized that he was making a difference, not just for his clients, but for his entire team. The gratitude he felt was overwhelming. Each morning, he arrived at work with a smile, grateful for the unexpected opportunity and determined to continue spreading kindness and inspiring others. Lucas had found not just a new job, but a true calling. Lucas, now a prominent figure in the company, has earned the respect of not only his colleagues, but also the local community. His compassionate approach to parking management has made it a go-to place for customer service. Local residents and neighboring businesses have come to know him by name, greeting him on the street. His reputation as a fair and empathetic leader has spread, attracting the attention of business owners and community leaders. Lucas has been invited to speak at schools and local events, sharing his inspiring story. His presence in the community has become a symbol of how integrity and kindness can transform not only a career but an entire workplace and community. With his new position, Lucas was finally able to provide the life he had always dreamed of for his family. The financial worries that had once plagued him were now a distant memory. He was able to move with his mother, Elisa, and his daughter, Sophia, to a more comfortable home in a quiet neighborhood. Sophia was enrolled in a better school, where her potential flourished. Elisa, freed from financial stress, was able to pursue her hobbies and take better care of her health. Lucas felt a deep gratitude when he saw his mother's carefree smile and the sparkle in Sophia's eyes. Family evenings, once tense due to worries about bills, were now moments of joy and connection. Lucas knew that this stability was a precious gift, the result of his perseverance and the unexpected destiny that a simple act of kindness brought. The relationship between Lucas, Marcos, and their grandmother evolved into a deep and meaningful friendship. Lucas would make regular visits to the woman, now affectionately referred to as Grandma Amelia by her family. These visits became precious moments filled with stories, laughter, and sometimes reflections on how a small gesture can change lives. Marcos and Lucas developed a strong professional partnership based on mutual respect and shared values. They would often have dinner together with their families, creating bonds that went beyond the work environment. This unexpected friendship became a constant reminder to Lucas of the power of human connection and how fate can bring people together in surprising ways. Mutual gratitude and affection were evident in every interaction, solidifying a friendship that promised to last for many years. In quiet moments, Lucas often found himself reflecting on his extraordinary journey. The contrast between his life now and that fateful day in the parking lot was startling. A simple act of helping an elderly woman had set off a chain of events that completely transformed his life. Lucas vividly remembered the anguish he felt when he was laid off, the fear of an uncertain future. Now, looking back, he saw how that moment of despair had actually been the catalyst for profound and positive change. This reflection reinforced his belief in the power of kindness and integrity. Lucas realized that his life had not only changed materially, but had also gained new purpose and meaning. This journey had taught him to value every small act of kindness, knowing that it can have a much greater impact than one might imagine. As Lucas settled into his new life, a profound understanding crystallized in his mind. True success, he realized, was not measured by the size of his bank account or the prestige of his position. It was something much deeper and more meaningful. It was in the human connections he had formed, the respect of his employees, the friendship with Marcos, the affection of Grandma Amelia. It was in the satisfaction of seeing his team grow and develop under his leadership. It was in the peace of mind that came from living according to his values, even when challenged. Lucas now understood that real success was the ability to positively impact the lives of others, to create an environment where compassion and integrity flourished. This realization motivated him daily, reinforcing his commitment to lead not just with competence, but with heart. Lucas's story became an inspiring legend within the company and among customers. New and old employees looked to him as a living example of how integrity and compassion can lead to true success. His journey was often shared in trainings and meetings, serving as a powerful reminder of the company's core values. Regular customers appreciated not only the efficient service, but also the friendly atmosphere that permeated the location under Lucas's leadership. Many spoke of how the employees' positive and helpful attitudes had transformed a mundane task like parking into an enjoyable experience. Lucas's story inspired others to practice small acts of kindness in their own lives, creating a ripple effect of positivity that extended far beyond the confines of the parking lot. Lucas embraced his new reality with humility and renewed determination. Each day was an opportunity to reaffirm his commitment to compassionate leadership. He continued to surprise his team with small gestures of thoughtfulness, a sincere thank you, a listening ear for personal concerns, a word of encouragement during difficult times. Lucas understood now more than ever that the greatest rewards often come from the smallest gestures. He constantly encouraged his team to seek out opportunities to make a difference, no matter how small. His journey was far from over. In fact, Lucas felt like he was just beginning a new phase, one in which he could use his position and experience to spread even more kindness and inspiration. He moved forward, grateful for each day and looking forward to the opportunities that the future still held.